All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, well, good morning. Thank you for being here. Today, we're going to be talking about Google Earth, and we're going to be talking about navigation and a little bit of implementation of it. And this is with Region 9 Education Cooperative. So a quick overview of our presentation today. We're going to talk about what is Google Earth. Then we're going to talk about Google Earth versus Google Maps and kind of how they differ. Then we're going to hop onto Google Earth and navigate. And then after that, we'll talk about time lapse and some virtual field trips and things of that nature. Some hopeful outcomes from this presentation that I hope you get are, well, the first being that you're able to navigate Google Earth to a basic degree. And then I'm hoping that you're able to think of creative ways to use it in your classroom or however you see fit for your career or things of that nature. And then the last thing is that I hope it opens your heart and your mind to other technology tools. My name is Tessa Talsma. I'm a digital learning coach at Region 9. And if you need to contact me or reach out to me for any reason, my email is attached here. And I'm sure it's attached on some sort of Zoom link or anything like that that you may have access to. So if you need me, that's how you can contact me. So let's go ahead and jump into what is Google Earth. So Google Earth is a computer program that's generated through Google that creates a 3D representation of Earth primarily through satellite imagery. However, they also use aerial photography, GIS data, and they put that onto a 3D globe, and that allows us, the users, to see cities and landscapes from a lot of different angles, which you're going to be able to see once we jump onto that website. So looking at Google Maps and Google Earth, Google Maps, if you haven't used it, I feel like most people are familiar with it. I don't want to say everyone because there are a few people that are like, I don't use GPS. I just know how to get places, which is very impressive to me. I can't get anywhere without, I personally use Apple Maps, but it's so comparable, almost identical to Google Maps. But Google Maps allows users to see their location on a map using a location-based service or GPS. And so Google Maps typically is used for navigation, whereas Google Earth is a 3D interactive environment created by Google. And so while you could use Google Earth for navigation to a degree, I wouldn't say like you should open Google Earth to go like figure out how to get to the nearest grocery store in a city that you don't know how to navigate, right? So Google Earth is more for exploration of like maybe areas that are unknown or maybe areas that you want to explore in the future, but you're not sure. Like I use it a lot to decide where I want to travel, for example. So anyway, Google Maps more location-based and used for navigation. Google Earth is interactive. So looking at what they just like presentation-wise, what they look like, the top image is Google Maps, this right up here. And then the bottom image is Google Earth. And I know it's kind of zoomed out, but I think you can get the gist of it as we talk about it. So looking at Google Maps, you can see that you have all of the main roads, you have all of the towns and cities labeled. You have, you can see the water in both of them, but it's very 2D, meaning that there's nothing coming up off of it. It's just kind of a presentation. It looks like a map, right? If you were to compare it to a regular map, it should look pretty identical. I guess it's a degree more interactive because it's online, but it's supposed to look like a map because it's called Google Maps. Anyway, looking at Google Earth, you have the 2D option available, and then you have the 3D option available. And so right now in the bottom image, looking at it, so they're both of Seattle. And so the bottom one, you can kind of see the buildings are kind of popping up in a 3D way because Google Earth allows users to interact with it, zoom in, zoom out, and you'll see that once we kind of get jumping into it and moving with it. You can see that there are still some labels and things like that. That is up to the user to decide, and we'll talk about that too whenever we get into the presentation, but you can make that go away if you don't want that visible, or you can add more if you want more visible. Anyway, let's go ahead and just jump into the website and we'll play around from there. So looking at how to get there, before we jump in, and I don't want to, I say this because I don't want to forget it. Before I got too far into this presentation, I was wondering, are you able to use Google Maps? I'm sorry, not Google Maps, Google Earth. Are you able to use Google Earth without a Google account? And the short answer is yes, you can. The longer answer is, of course, it's not going to save anything that you access or create or anything like that. And some of the accessibility, I think, is limited if you don't have an account. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm going to be navigating Google Earth through a Google account. That's something else to kind of keep in mind. Depending on what you're browsing with, like, so if you're on an iPad, you can download the app. I believe on your phone, you can download the app. Certain computers and desktops, you can download it onto them. That's totally accessible. I'm able to just use the website. That's worked for me. That's met all of my needs. And so today I'm going to be using the website to do everything that we're going to be doing. So you can simply Google Earth if you want to. I just google.com/earth. That's how I access most of their websites, just like google.com/docs, anything like that. You get there however you'd like. Since I'm already logged into my Google account, it just immediately loaded Google Earth for me. And this is probably where I left off, if I'm being honest. I think I was intentional about zooming out so you could see the whole Earth view. However, if you've accessed Google Earth before, it's going to start where you left off typically. Okay, so looking at our screen, there's a lot to kind of look at. Off to the side here, we have some tools that we're going to talk about and navigate. And then over here, we have some other tools that are similar to when you navigate Google Maps. So here, you can fly to your location. So if you allow location on your computer and things of that nature, you can click that. It'll take you directly to where you are. I'm personally not going to do that because I am working from home currently. However, you can take this little person and drag and drop to Street View, which we will do a little bit later in our presentation. Here is our 3D button. It's not allowing 3D because I haven't chosen where I want to go, and I'm not zoomed in enough for it to present anything as 3D. So once that's available, it will become a button that I can click and available to me. And then here, you can, oops, I'm sorry. Right here, you can reset the view and you can click to swap for the globe view. Then of course you have your zoom and things of that nature. Then here you can add place marks, which works with our projects that we'll be talking about. And then you can draw lines or shapes and add things if that makes you happy. All right. So let's go ahead and go to our little pancake stack at the top. We have more. So whenever you click that, you're going to see Google Earth, and then you're going to have your account information. So this is my account information. I added my little photo. I can sign out if I want to. First thing that we see is search. Then we have Voyager, projects, map style, photos, which right now I have turned off. I'll show what that looks like later. Settings, feedback, and help. So just basic account things. What I want to kind of point out real quick is that right here, all of these tools, they're also kind of here. And then, so search, for example, there's search right here. Voyager is also here and here. So it's same tools, same access, just different places to find them. I'm feeling lucky. That pops up, I believe, whenever you go to search. Yes. So if you go to search and at the bottom, it says I'm feeling lucky, and I'll show you what that does. If those of you that aren't super familiar with Google, I think you'll have fun with it. If you've used Google before, you'll have an idea of what it does. Anywho, we'll get there. And so going back to our pancake stack, projects, right here we have our projects. And then, oops, last one, map style, our map styles are here. The measurement tool is located here, and then up here we have the photo option. So, but it's 2 buttons, so not too much to navigate, not too much to learn. So let's go ahead and just start simply with our search because it's our first navigation tool. And so whenever you go to search, it gives you some things that are featured, and we'll talk about some of these things once we're done going through all of our little tools. And then it has some kind of recommendations, if you will, about must-see views. And then you have the I'm feeling lucky. So let's go ahead and just take one of their must-see views, for example. I would love to see, let's go to Rome. So I just selected what they suggested. And so we're going to go see this fountain. I don't want to mispronounce it if I'm being honest. And so if you notice, it automatically changed it to 3D for me because it was recommending this location. And you can see that these buildings kind of pop up off of what we're looking at, the Earth, really. And so now it's just kind of taking a slow rotation until I decide what I want to do. It's giving me a kind of a 360 aerial view. And so I just want to click 2D so you can see the difference. And so when we go to 2D, it just becomes flat. And when I zoom in, it still kind of has a 3D effect, but not as much as whenever I actually select 3D. And then I can see it coming up off of what looks like the screen almost. So again, it's giving me that aerial view, which if I'm being honest, I think it spends a touch more than I would prefer. But zooming in, I can see more and more details, and then it'll load it a little bit more and a little bit more. Another question that came to mind as I was doing this is, can you access Google Earth from Promethean boards and interactive touchscreens and things of that nature? And so I tested it. It will not load. Google Earth will not load. And from my understanding, you can't download an app or anything like that onto your Promethean board. However, if you do it on your computer, you can just screen share to your Promethean board. I will say that from my experience, it does get a little pixelated, but you can still do it. So it's cool, but it's not as cool as if you were doing it on a device. So moving back to exploring the tools and things of that nature. So you're able to zoom in and it gives information here. And so what I want to do is I kind of want to go to map style. I know I'm kind of skipping around, but I went from search to map style because I want to show that I can change the information provided. So if I do clean, no borders, labels, places, or roads, it's not going to give me any information. It's just going to show me what I not searched for, but their suggestion, right? I was looking up the fountain, there's the fountain. Whereas if I change to exploration, it's going to show those borders, labels, places, and roads. And so you'll notice that that information pops right up. Then if you go to everything, it's going to show all borders and labels, places, roads, transit, landmarks, and water. So it gives you everything. And so I typically have it on everything because I want to know everything. I want to know what I'm looking at. I want to know what there's to do, how to get there, you know, I want to know everything. And so I keep all of that information. And that way I don't have to switch back from Google Maps to Google Earth, to Google Maps, to Google Earth. I can kind of do everything I need here and get the fun interactive side of it. And then the bottom one is custom. You can choose what you want to see and what you don't want to see. And so like clouds, for example, I have it set to where it does a like time lapse of the last 24 hours of cloud coverage of the Earth. And so when I'm zoomed to the correct degree where I can see the clouds, it'll show me that, which is very neat in my mind. I've been very interested in clouds lately. And so I don't know, it's just been fun for me. And then so borders and labels, if I chose the custom right now on custom, I have it off apparently. Same for places, roads, transits, etc. You can get more specific about what you want it to look like if you turn it on, which is very neat. Same for places. Anywho. So I'm going to go ahead and go to maybe just exploration so it's not too overwhelming. What do we think? Or clean? Let's keep it on clean just so you can still see the features. And then if we want to know a little bit more about the area, I can turn that back on. Okay, going down to the layers. So again, we're in the map style. So I have it clean right now, and then I'm turn on 3D buildings. And so I absolutely want to see those buildings in 3D. That's very interesting to me. That's why we're here, right? And then we want to turn on animated clouds. I turn that on, and so I just explained that a little bit. And then the last one is turn on grid line. So you can turn on the grid line. So if you're doing latitude or longitude projects, let me zoom out so that, let me maybe go to 2D so we can, there we go. So in 2D, it'll do, you have to be out of 3D in order for that to work. I'm learning with you. So if you're doing any sort of project or anything like that that requires latitude or longitude lines, this might be a fun tool to access for your classroom. Anyhow, I'm going to turn that off because I'm not interested in it at this current moment. However, now I lost my fountain. That's okay. There it is. So I'm happy with my map style. So I'm going to go back to kind of exploring the area that I was in. I'm going to change it back to 3D because I like the texture of that. I like being able to see all of this. And what's neat is here, I can go ahead and drop this little human, and it'll take me to real life like imagery of what this looks like. So this is like a true image, which is really pretty neat. Anywho, so let's go ahead and go back to our search, and I want to go ahead and go to the Grand Canyon, let's say. So it's going to take me all the way out, and it's going to fly me all the way over to the Grand Canyon. And so I'm back in 2D, and then it does give me some information right here about the Grand Canyon, which is pretty neat. And so let's go ahead and zoom out so we can kind of just see. So this is kind of just regular satellite map imagery. And as we zoom in, we get a little more of that detail that we were looking for, but I'm going to switch it to 3D. And so here you can kind of see the different layers and levels of the Grand Canyon, right? And if I zoom in more, gives you more. Sorry, I accidentally pressed a zoom tool. And then if I like to just kind of check and see where I can drag this person. And so it looks like I can put that person there. So let's see what happens whenever I drag them all the way down to the bottom of the canyon. And so it puts us right here in a river, which is pretty neat. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and remove that little human person, I guess. They're not a human. Anyway, I'm going to remove them. And so this is a really fun tool to kind of play around with, mess with, explore. So any place that you've never been, you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. And then if you're able to drag that little human, then you can place them and see like real life imagery of what it looks like, which is very, very neat. So zooming out, I'm going to just show you kind of where the cloud coverage starts. So now you can kind of see the clouds. And then if you zoom in to a certain degree, they disappear, which makes sense, right? So anywho, let's go ahead and move on to our next, or let me go ahead and close out of this. And then I want to show we'll just move to the next one. We'll take these one step at a time. So Voyager is kind of an exploration type tool. And so it is some of the more interactive parts of Google Earth, if you will. And so, for example, the first one that they presented was time lapse in Google Earth. So let's just jump into that. All right, so it has taken me to a certain location in Berlin, it looks like. And so it gives you can start searching for something if there's something specifically you want to look at. So let's see if we can do New Mexico. Okay, I'm gonna zoom out a touch maybe. But as you can see at the top, the years are changing and you can see that the landscape is changing too. Maybe this is kind of a subtle one to do. But let's go ahead and look at the changing forest, just so you can kind of see a big change. All right, so it's loading for us. And now you can see all the imagery change. So if students were doing a project on maybe global warming or deforestation or just anything of that nature, this would be a great resource for them to use to access, either to include in their presentation and to include in their whatever it is that they're having to create, or just to learn more about it, because it does provide information below as well. And so if that wasn't what I was looking for, I can look at cattle ranching. And so we can see how cattle affects land around areas. And so anyhow, very, very neat for time lapse. 3D imagery. We can explore the world in 3D. So that's basically what we've been kind of doing already. Let's go ahead and fly here. And so I'm sorry. So at the settings, it's, let me back up. Once you've flown to a specific location, you can use the buttons below to get a better view. So I have to choose a certain location to go. And so what we'll do is let's do I'm feeling lucky. So I'm feeling lucky just randomly chooses somewhere for you to go. I'm going to choose another one just because I'd rather go to the zoo, if I'm being honest. So let's look at the zoo. We're here, we're at the zoo. And so if we wanted 3D imagery, remember, we just kind of are able to move in and things of that nature. And so it's looking like this is kind of more of a developed area. And sometimes what happens is trees can limit visibility, is what I have been learning. And so if we go to 2D, it's going to look pretty similar, right? Yeah. So if we zoom out, it looks a little bit better, but again, trees limit some of the visibility. And so let's try if we just came over to these buildings. So I'm wondering if it just hasn't been updated in this area. That could be something that we're running into. Whereas if we try somewhere else, let's see if this area has been updated so that we can access those 3D features again. All right, so this has been updated because you see this all loading and becoming more of a 3D image. Anywho, so I'm feeling lucky just sends you to random places and things of that nature. So we've gone over time lapse. We've looked at the 3D imagery. We've kind of talked about the satellite imagery. You're able to access that before it becomes 3D essentially. And so this is also in some of the time lapse areas. So if you go back to time lapse, they have this in a separate location as well. So these are all really great resources for students or educators to use whenever they're teaching on topics such as these. Down here, there's some awesome information just to kind of explore. And so for example, let's do this first one. So you can kind of see things that people have created and things that you have access to. And so if you are a climber, like a mountain climber, for example, El Capitan is one of the most wow, impressive things to climb, right? And so it's giving information about one of the first climbers of it and things of that nature. And so you can start exploring your climb, which is really, really cool. And so It tells you where you're starting, gives you all this information, tells you the way that you should go, your elevation, all of like very interesting and useful. I feel like this would be super useful if I'm not personally a climber, but as a hiker, I use Google Earth to access trails and things of that nature. So same difference, absolutely. Okay, so then you have games that you can play. So if your students are into games and things of that nature, so for example, you can have Carmen Sandiego take you around the globe and things like that. There's also layers that you can add, which we went through, right? That's kind of, what am I trying to say? It also has to do with your map styles. Street view, you can also always get street view when you drag that little human to wherever it is that you're able to. You can only drag them to where the blue lines are. And so if there's not a blue line, you're most likely not going to be able to drag them or see the street or like real life view. So again, you can look at all of these different topics and it's relevant to Google Earth. It's relevant to your classroom. It's relevant to whatever you need it to apply. And so it's really just a great way to get your students out of their classroom without actually having to leave the classroom. And here they have a whole education tab. And so these are things that are specifically made for education and to be used in the classroom for students. And so all of these could be accessed by you, an educator. Lots of fun things in Voyager. So let's go ahead and I want to talk about projects, and before we continue, I want to turn on photos so that we're able to see things a little bit better. And so while we're in a national park, we're in Yosemite right now, which I love national parks a lot. And so anywho, happy to be in Yosemite, even if it is virtually. And so here, now that I've turned on photos, you're going to see all of these little bubbles pop up. And what these bubbles are exactly, hopefully, what you're thinking, photos. And so, for example, let's click this one. Wow, right? So this is someone on their road trip, on their adventure, on their vacation, whatever you want to call it. And they uploaded this photo to say, oh, this is what it looks like from this point, right? Incredible. So then we can go back, going here. This is one of the most like well-known views in Yosemite, and they caught it on a phenomenal non-hazy day. Beautiful. And you can even see the little half dome in the back. Phenomenal, beautiful. Anywho, so photos kind of let you know, hey, this is kind of the location, this is the point, this is what it looks like. And so again, we can bring this little human down anywhere that it's blue, supposedly. So I'm going to drop them there just to see where it takes us. And so it's taking us through the mountain. And so it takes us to the base and we can look up at the beauty of this national park, right? And so you can tell at this time of year, it was a little chilly. Very neat. And so I'm going to go ahead and remove that person. I do want to explore. So here are the trees. And so we're lucky that we were able to get the street view through that. But if I try to zoom in too far, the trees just kind of they kind of remind me of Minecraft, if I'm being honest, just a little bit clunky and you can't see very well. And so what I do want to do is go into 3D one more time because there are some phenomenal points specifically in that national park that are fun to play with on Google Earth. So we're going to go to the half dome that I mentioned earlier. And so I want to come here specifically because I like to see the depths of like, look at how cool and how steep and just like, even just on the computer, that's very impressive. And so here it's giving me information about Half Dome. And what I want to do, you can see all the images. Before we look at the images, I want to zoom in a little bit. And so when we zoom in, it gives you this phenomenal detailed 3D view of the Half Dome, which is just like, wow, incredible, right? Anywho, and then we zoom out and let's look at what it'd look like in real life if we were up top. That is a view from the top which is very neat. I want to see if I can drag this little human anywhere. And so if you notice there's blue up here, that little blue trail, we're going to drag them there and let's check out what it looks like from the top. Oh, it didn't let me. Let's try one more time. Oh, here we go. Ooh, how pretty. Okay. So I'm going to zoom out a touch. Looks like we got it right at sundown or sun up. Who knows? I could probably figure it out if I took a moment to figure out what direction it was what. Anyhow, it'll take you to the top. You can view things. I like to kind of view the trail over here because it's very steep. And this is what it looks like in real life. So you can see the imagery is very similar to the real life view. And you can see, whoa. And all the way up, right? Super cool. And so this is fun. Like I'm having a great time just playing around with it while I'm presenting to you, but students can have a really good time with this too, because it's taking them to places that they may have never been or have access to before, right? And so that's just something to consider. Anywho, I think I've said that a million times at this point in this presentation. I'm sorry, but I feel like I kind of start ranting about one part of it. And I'm like, wait, gotta focus, gotta focus. And so we've gone over just searching basic things. We've explored a little bit with Voyager. We're going to talk about projects, and because we've already talked about map styles. So let's talk about projects very quickly. I have a fake project that I edited an hour ago. We're just going to start a new project. So maybe if I wanted to continue to work on this one, I can edit it, I can pin it, and I can preview it, right? Or look at it, show the project, excuse me. Here, if I click new project, I have the option to create one in Google Drive. I can open one from my Google Drive if I already have an existing one, or I can import or create other things from different places on my computer. So I'm just going to create one in Google Drive because that works best for me. And so for this titled project, I'm going to call it Tech Bits Exploration Road Trip. And we are going to road trip across the US. I guess I should be. Got educators here. I need to make sure I'm using my punctuation. So here you can add collaborators. So maybe I want to share this project. And so anyone that I share it with is going to see that my name is on it. And so I'm going to continue. And then I'm going to choose who I want to collaborate with. So maybe I want to collaborate with April, and I'm going to say, hey, April, let's road trip on Google Earth. Right. And so then I'm going to allow either her to be a viewer or editor, or I can make it an expiration. So maybe I'm like, I just want her to be able to see it for this next week. And then I don't want her to have access, or whatever the case may be. As of right now, I'm going to let her be an editor. I don't have any preferences. You can also decide how much access they have as an editor, and I can decide if I want to notify people. It also picks up who I interact with a lot and who I share things with a lot. And so it's recommending that I add other people. I'm going to go ahead and ignore that and send it. Thanks, April, for joining my road trip, hopefully. Anywho, so I've added her as a collaborator. I can reload my project, I can delete it, or I can do any of these things. So let's go ahead and click new feature. And so we can search to add a place. We can add a place mark. We can draw lines or shapes. We can add a folder. We can do a full screen slide, or we could do a tile overlay. So there's a lot of options that we can do. First, I want to go ahead and, since we're at Half Dome, I just want to start there. I'm going to say, April, we are going to Yosemite. We are going to go hike the Half Dome. I don't care if you don't want to hike. I don't know how many miles. I think it's like 14. I don't care if we're going to do it. That's where we're starting. Day one, right? We're wilding. And so I'm going to go ahead and add the place mark. And I'm going to click half dome. So here, since this is my project, it's what I'm doing, right? I have access to kind of put my own information in. And so if I want to add photos, I can do so by uploading my own using Google, YouTube, Google Drive, my photos. Same as any Google tool, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and go to Google search, and I'm going to go to Half Dome. And it's giving me these lovely photos. I'm going to choose this first one because I think it's pretty. And so I'm going to select it. And I have the option to add more if I wanted to do a whole like visual thing. Anywho, for the title of this, I'm just going to put Half Dome. Down here, I'm going to put information about April and Tessa will hike to the peak of the Half Dome. A1 of road trip. Later, they will relax down in the canyon, whatever the case may be. And so here we have information about our info box. And so what I want to do is go ahead and click preview. And so right now I have it on the small info box. It's little, it's not taking up too much of the screen, and it seemed appropriate for how much information I typed. However, if I had a ton of information, I might consider switching it to the large info box, because then it has more space to share the information that I have located on there, or not located, but provided on there. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and switch it back to the small info box. And then here I can decide which place mark I want and what color. So for example, the color, I'm going to choose a green because I like the earthy colors. And I'm going to do just the regular location is fine with me. So I'm going to close this, and you have the little green, super cute. And then here, it sets all of the location things for me. So if I wanted to create a project for my students to navigate and figure out latitude, longitude, those sort of things, I could do that if I really wanted to. Anywho, so now that I've done all of that, it auto saves it from my understanding. That's what it's telling me. And so we can preview all of what we have, and let's go ahead and go back. And so Half Dome is on there. And so I have the option to edit it, stop previewing it, or I can delete it. And so I'm going to go ahead and add another place. While we're in California, let's go. Oh, I don't know. Let's go to Sequoia National Park, I guess. We like big trees. So it's taking me, woo, we're going over to Sequoia. And so let's say that I want this to be my second place on my project. So in my project, I have my new feature. And so it's taking me back to Half Dome. So I'm going to search. So I just made a mistake and I just searched in the wrong spot. But Google Earth is like, hey, I recognize what you did. And it's suggesting that that's what I meant. And it absolutely is what I meant. And so I'm going to go ahead and click that. Why isn't it letting me? There we go. No. What happened? Let's see. There we go. I'm sorry. I needed to press a little arrow. So we're going to Sequoia, and it's giving us some information. And so right here, after the information, I'm just going to click add to project. And so now, because it already had that information provided for me, I'm able to add my own stuff and replace what Google provided, which I'm sure as an educator, we probably want our students to do. So I just like replace if I wanted to. And so again, I can add my own images, provide the information that I'd like to, customize everything that I'd like. For right now, I'm just going to go ahead and leave this on there just so we can see what it looks like with two of them. So now we have two places that we are able to go. Let's go ahead and look at some of, I'm sorry, Let's see what a full screen slide would look like. So let's see. We're just going to title it as an example slide. And so maybe I want to add another picture of, oh my gosh, I can't spell. We're just going to go back to half dome again because I'm not very good at spelling, and that's okay. We all have our strengths. Okay, so anywho, I have all of this. Let's say that that's the way that I want it. Maybe I want the heading to say road trip. Oh, maybe I don't. What is it? Oh, I guess these need to be numbers. So if I wanted to set these things, I personally could. For example, if I wanted to put the latitude, longitude, that sort of thing. I'm not going to. So let's go ahead and present and see what that looks like. So our first part of our presentation, it takes us to the first part of our road trip, which was the Half Dome. Second part, it should take us to Sequoia National Park. It does, and I didn't have information on that one. Remember, I had the no info box selected, so it just took us to the national park. And then the last one should be a slide that could present information if I wanted it to, which is very nice. And so you can create whole presentations of any sort of location. So if you're doing a history project, maybe you're traveling through different places in history, that would be a phenomenal way to present it, because look how you can find imagery, you can change how you present each part of your presentation, which is very, very neat. Anywho, all that to say that you can create projects and present them and make them very meaningful and in-depth and interactive, which is super incredible. If you did a tile overlay, let's see what happens. I am going to do a different national park just so we don't get tired of looking at that half dome. And let's do the Narrows. Beautiful, yes. Okay, Narrows, tile overlay. And again, we're just kind of exploring to see what this does. I'm going to keep it as a small info box. If I wanted the overlay URL, I could do that. Some other options is deciding the size and the coverage. And I can preview it too. So let's go ahead and go back and let's present and see what that looks like. So again, that's the first one. I'm not going to take a lot of time on the first three because I'm kind of seeing how it goes from our slide into the tile overlay. And so this probably should have been relevant to Sequoia National Park, which I'm learning, no big deal. So a tile overlay would probably be good if you want to provide additional information that wasn't included in the first info box, or something else that you want them to think about, or if I wanted my audience to be thinking about a question before I transition to the next part, that would be a great use for that. All right, so I think we have accessed most of these tools. Draw liner shape does exactly what it sounds like. So let's go to half dome, and then I want to draw a liner shape. Maybe if it'll let me. See, I'm learning with you. I don't know. Let's close that. Will it take me? I don't know what I've done now. That's okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, I suppose. Okay, well, I guess I am just struggling. So let's try this one more time and see if it'll let me draw on here. Otherwise, I'm going to have to relearn this skill because I've made it work before. Okay, there we go. And so then I could draw, maybe I'm saying this is exactly where XYZ happened, right? Anyway,
That's really cool.
kind of neat. Lots of details that you can add.
Amazing.
And so, yeah, that's basically, I do need to become a little more familiar with the presentation tool, but it looks like you can make a really cool presentation depending on what it is that you're teaching or presenting on. And so we've already talked about the layers and things like that. And then if we wanted to add everything, we zoom out, it'll provide more information about the area, about different points, things of that nature. And then the last tool that we're going to talk about is our distance. And so whenever we talk about distance, so let me move this again, have a little question mark, and it tells you a little bit more information about how to use it. So you can measure between locations and along paths, and you can also measure the size of polygons that I draw on Google Earth. So that little triangle that I drew, I can measure that if I really wanted to. And so it's giving us some information that, hey, it doesn't account for a change in elevation. So it may look like this, but it's not talking about the elevation gain and so forth. And so you can choose what you want it to measure. So let's do miles, for example. So maybe I want to start here. I want to see how far it is to get to there. And it tells you it's 8.12 miles. And then maybe I want to come down here to this little campground. Anyway, so you can measure how far things are and things of that nature. But yeah, I think that is everything that I have for Google Earth. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Any questions or anything like that?
Tessa, I do not have any questions for you. Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.